Welcome back to the Negatives with Sweet Lou. Today on the show, Pentax is taking lessons from Rolly and Polaroid with their $500 beginner-friendly half-frame camera. I'll tell you why I hate that price. Then, despite taking steps in the right direction, Adobe continues to be down bad with a brand new lawsuit from the DOJ, all the while increasing their yearly price tag. It's really smart stuff there. In semi-good news, we have Fuji starting to produce more film in China. And speaking of film, sound the alarms because Kodak is stopping all their film production. That doesn't sound great. And lastly, we have some interesting new developments, see what I did there, with the Shroud of Turin. I'll tell you what that has to do with photography. All this and more in today's episode. Let's get negative. The Negatives is sponsored by me, of course, because no one has the balls to sponsor this godforsaken channel. So make sure you smash subscribe, leave a like, yap in the comments so we can blow this video directly up the algorithm's asshole. Let's get into the show. The Pentax 17 has been out for a little bit and it was being celebrated. There was a lot of fanfare, but a few weeks or months, I guess you could say now, because that's how my video production goes, some time has passed, let's say that, and I haven't really seen anything else about it. It's kind of fallen out of my subscription feed already. It's almost like Pentax sent out cameras to a bunch of people for early review videos or something like that. Now here's the thing, I love Pentax. If you follow my channel, you already knew that. The overwhelming majority of my 35mm photography happens to take place on my beat to shit Pentax K1000, you know, the one that I left on the back of my car and drove away that one time. I do love how the Pentax 17 looks for what it's worth. I love that Pentax is making a new camera in 2024, but I really don't think this one's for me. I'm not exactly jumping over the moon for another half-frame camera, to be honest. I don't really shoot half-frame like that, and from what I've seen, the photos look good, but I've heard mixed things about the user experience in general. I can't really speak on that because I've never even held one though, so don't hold me to it. The biggest issue for me is that price tag. Here, this one guy on Reddit fixed it. There you go, price justified. I do recognize the fact that this is a newly developed camera body in 2024. I do recognize the fact that the used camera market has kinda spoiled us. But I gotta just be honest, I don't care. I just can't get over that price for a half frame, I'm sorry. And more importantly, if the half frame beginner camera is $500, oh man, how much is the SLR gonna be? It's gonna be $1,000 since it's full frame instead of half. I just don't see myself using it, which makes the price all the more steep for me. $500 is a lot of film, just saying. And more importantly, how many beginners do you know who are ready to shell out $500 on a hobby they aren't even sure they like yet? Here's the thing, all these legacy film cameras will break down eventually. They're mechanical pieces, they're gonna fail. I would rather take my money and invest it in maintaining the ones I already have, learn how to fix them, rather than drop that money into a hype camera for a YouTube video that's in a format I don't really shoot. That's just me. This does seem like a good sign for them as a business. The camera's doing well, so we'll likely see more from them in the future. Moving on here, I saw that Polaroid has released more cameras. Wow. One is a collab, it's an all black Now Plus. I just put out my 3 years too late review of that camera. You can go check it out here. There's also a white and a purple version. Hey, I have a quick question. Where's the improved color chemistry? And follow-up question, this isn't even me being a dickhead here. Why the Polaroid Now and not the Now Plus or the i2? Why the older camera? That's rhetorical. It's obvious their priority is camera maxing because in a weird way, Polaroid is like Blizzard and Overwatch. They both prioritize the profit from cosmetics instead of fixing core mechanics that would vastly improve user experience. Who cares if the film doesn't work properly when it's too hot or too cold? That's just art, man. But hey, don't take it from me. I'm just a man on the internet. Listen to Polaroid themselves. Failure is good. Failure is fun. Hey, speaking of failure, let's talk about Adobe. In the last episode of The Negatives, I talked about Adobe's shitty new invasive terms of service. The too long didn't read is basically you were granting them access to your media and they were using it to train AI models. And you can go watch the video to go more in depth, but that's the basics. An interesting update, I haven't received that agreement for the new terms of service, so I think Adobe might have backed off from forcing that onto people. Either that or it's gonna kind of be like Disney Plus and somewhere along the lines I gave Adobe permission to kill me and harvest my organs. Who knows? In the latest of the Adobe Cringe saga, they're being sued by the US Department of Justice. The DOJ alleges that Adobe, quote, obscures fees and makes it illegally tricky for users to cancel software subscriptions. And of course, Adobe was like, no, so we'll have to keep an eye on that one. Who knows where the truth is with that one. It's great timing too, considering Adobe just increased the price of Creative Cloud this year. And yeah, I'm kind of late to the game. This happened back in March, but my renewal date is in August.
Well, shit. see it.
I didn't realize it, and I noticed it on my credit card statement. Very cool. With prices like these, you'd think their software would actually work and be good, but
wrong.
So Adobe now has a page on their website dedicated to explaining how their cancellation fees work, and they're all on this sliding scale. It's all very transparent and clear and right here in front of your face. So if you cancel 12 months in, hoo boy, you got a couple $100 to pay. But don't worry, they give you a break if you cancel it exactly at the right time. On top of all these fees that you have to work out, they also just make it difficult to cancel in general. According to the FTC, when consumers reach out to Adobe's customer service to cancel, they encounter resistance and delay from Adobe's representatives. Consumers also experience other obstacles such as dropped calls and chats and multiple transfers. Some consumers who thought they had successfully canceled their subscription reported that the company continued to charge them until discovering the charges on their credit card statements. I am probably going to have to stick it out for another year with Adobe either way. I don't want to pay those cancellation fees, and I'm too entrenched in their workflow. There's too many projects, and one of my biggest issues is I don't have an alternative for Negative Lab Pro yet. Negative Lab Pro only works in Lightroom, so that's kind of a big problem for me. It does seem like some of the other big companies are smelling the blood in the water though. Blackmagic and Canva have both taken their shots at Adobe, and even Apple is kicking Adobe in the dick and balls with their push for Final Cut 11. Who even realized Final Cut was still a thing? Between them and the DOJ, we might be seeing a major paradigm shift in the editing world in the coming years. It's definitely not going to be something quick. But you never know, with the rise of DaVinci paired with all this cringe, in 5 years Adobe might not be the industry giant they are at the moment. We'll just have to see. And if all else fails and Adobe's still the top dog in the future, just remember that when Pirate King Gold Roger was executed, he started the great era of piracy. Alright, moving on here, Petapixel put out an article saying that photography is one of the most attractive male hobbies to women. So ladies, 23% of you, is that true? Alright, we have to talk about the drones. They're popping up all over the place, but for whatever reason, it feels like New Jersey, of all places, happens to be the epicenter of this flying phenomenon. If you don't know about this story, basically people are seeing drones in huge numbers buzzing around in New Jersey and New York and the tri-state area, and it seems to be happening largely at night, which is kind of weird. My friends and I actually saw them when we were driving to see Free Throw at the Stone Pony a few weeks ago. It looked like 5 lights in a vertical line. It was really weird. As a licensed drone pilot, I can tell you a few things kind of stink about this story. A few things seem kind of off. First off, most modern drones aren't even going to let you take off if you're in a no-fly zone, so that's kind of weird. But more importantly nowadays, the FAA requires drones to be broadcasting some sort of ID. So if Johnny Mavic over here flies his drone into someone's apartment, the authorities can figure out it was Johnny Mavic. But no one knows who's flying or where they're coming from. Right, I mean, the pilot can't be that far away, but sure, they have no idea who's doing it. It's gotten to the point where the FAA has declared several no-fly zones in New Jersey and New York, even in my hometown, the Bronx. Currently, it seems like the ban is going to last through January 18th. Governor Kathy Hochul of New York said the action is purely precautionary. There are no threats to these sites. But this is coming from the same governor who posted a selfie on Instagram saying the subway is safe. During the same week, someone got burned alive down there. Officials say there's been nothing so far to suggest any drones have posed a national security or public safety threat. Just like that fucking balloon that flew over the entire country last year, you know? People online have a ton of theories. Of course, we're hearing a lot about aliens, which, I mean, obviously that's gotta be what it is. The official position of this channel is aliens, of course, and obviously the aliens are using FAA compliant lighting on their flying saucers. Duh, it's that you can see them before they scoop you up and probe you.
The party probe.
This guy on Twitter is definitely onto something here. This is very compelling. I think China has the drones flying over and they are emitting a frequency that makes me rip ass like every 3 minutes. But if I had to put the bit aside, I'm sure this is some sort of federal operation. There's no way our government has no clue what's going on. They clearly just don't want the public to know. And one other theory is that this whole thing is a psyop so that the government can just better regulate or ban drones entirely. Remember what I said last episode. And as we Americans know, banning things in this country historically has always gone really well. So while Congress didn't outright ban DJI, the United States Department of Commerce said it's looking into new rules that could potentially ban Chinese drones, including DJI, in the US, citing national security concerns. And I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't include this comment from President Biden.
Nothing nefarious, apparently, but they're checking it all out. I think it's just one. There's a lot of drones authorized up there. I think one started and they all got it. Everybody wanted to get in the deal. But we're following close.
Well, I, for one, feel relieved after hearing that. We have no idea about the origin of the drones or what they're doing, but don't worry, they're not a threat.
Right.
And more importantly, it seems as of early January, the drones have gone home. Trump has also vowed to release the drone report on day one of his administration, so I look forward to finding out what exactly was happening with this story. I mean, surely it was just a bunch of Johnny Mavics, you know, a bunch of drone hobbyists flying them all at once for the famous New Jersey Drone Club. And in trying times like these, always remember the words of our Lord and Savior, Sir Francis of the Filth.
Fuck drone! Skibbity boop.
Alright, moving on. Today's question comes from my friend Nick Lopresti, and he asks, what is the negatives? Baba Booey. It's this. It's this show. This is the negatives. By the way, Nick is a new friend of mine. Go check out his channel after this one. His videos are super fun. I genuinely enjoy watching everything he makes, and his channel is a breath of fresh air in the space. And before we move on to the next story, I want to put this on the record. This camera right here is going to be Yashica's next scam. If you're not familiar with that, make sure you go watch my video about Yashica after this one. But this, I'm calling it, this is going to be their next big grift. Fuji is producing more 35mm film to keep up with demand. This comes after the dirty deed of murdering my beloved Pro 400H. Thank you, Fuji. Very cool. Fuji will be producing C200 and C400 in China. They'll be produced with Yes Star, which apparently does work with medical films, and they recently put out this really cool looking reusable 35mm camera. There's talk around the web saying that this is Kodak's film that's just getting finished in China and labeled as Fuji, but I don't know, I have no idea. I do love Fuji, but man, I can't help but be a little skeptical about this. In my experience, film from China can be incredibly hit or miss. Reflex Lab produces some pretty consistently good stuff. On the flip side though, Five Below, for example, sells a bunch of Chinese film landfill garbage. Their cameras are terrible. I had 2 rolls of the Five Below color film, and I wanted to develop it in my C41 only to find out that the film has a remjet layer on it and it's not marked at all. There's no heads up for that, so if you send it into a lab, you can mess up their chemistry. It's the Wild West, so Wild East, I suppose, if you're in America. It's inconsistent, so we're gonna have to wait and see. I'm hoping that Fuji is a legacy brand and the quality control and standards will be significantly higher, but I can't tell you that for a fact either, so we'll have to wait and see. And one last quick note on Fuji, an executive recently hinted at the possibility of a new film camera made by them in the future. At least the dude said it isn't not happening. I don't know, it's very wait and see. I'm sure we'll have GCA 6 before that camera releases, if it releases. Who knows? Okay, summer is way over, but hey, depending on how you look at it, maybe this story is just really early for next summer. You can celebrate summer either way with this Hello Kitty themed camera. And the only reason I'm including this story is not because of the camera, but because around this time last year, actually, I found out that Hello Kitty isn't a cat, but in fact a little girl. What? I don't know, I just thought you should know that. Write that down, that might be important, you never know. And then a really late, shocking update to this story. I know you guys are on the edge of your seat with this one. As I was trying to find some articles to put on screen for this, I actually found that the creator recently updated and said Hello Kitty is a cat. Huh? In this episode of The Negatives, we have discovered the crucial fact that Hello Kitty simultaneously both is and is not a cat. This is a thought experiment that's kind of along those same lines, huh? Weird. Now we gotta talk about Kodak. So there's been a lot of chatter about Kodak since the last episode of The Negatives, your favorite show on all of YouTube. According to Cosmo Photo, Eastman Kodak has temporarily paused all film production in order to make improvements to the film production line at its factory in Rochester, New York. What, that intro wasn't clickbait? They're halting film production. I didn't say permanently. It came from Eastman Kodak CEO Jim Continenza during the Q3 2024 quarterly earnings report. Our film sales have increased on motion picture and in still film and other films. So on film, right, we're doing a shutdown in November, total shutdown, Continenza said. We've continued to invest in our manufacturing process while we need to shut down completely to bring light into the dark, right? Film is made in the dark. That's a good one. And all this comes after Kodak was sold Again, they were sold to some holding company, and honestly, this whole thing is a little bit confusing, but fortunately for you, my friend Metal Fingers did a really good video explaining the situation. You can go watch it on the little card on screen now. After you watch this video, of course. If you click away from this one, your next roll is gonna come out blank. I don't want that, you don't want that, so stick around. Ultimately, we're gonna have to see what happens after this. Hopefully, Kodak can scale up their production to meet the needs of the film community and filmmakers. You gotta remember that Kodak is such a huge piece of the puzzle here. Without Kodak, there's no offshoot brands like CineStill and Reflex Lab, and some of our favorite directors would be shooting movies on digital. We don't want that. Will there be a price decrease from all this?
Hey, I doubt it.
But it sure would be nice. Well, actually, we don't need to wonder any longer, because just as I was making this video, the announcement came out that we will, in fact, be seeing some price increases. That was quite an anime arc there. Along with some decreases, though, that's good. Cosmo Photo has an article about it. It's linked in the description below. Here's a breakdown of the price changes. You can pause the video now to check them out for yourself. I don't think it's all that interesting for me to sit here saying 5%, 10%.
Boring.
And speaking of Kodak, it's Triax's 70th birthday. Well, it was in November. I was supposed to do this in November and it's December. But either way, happy birthday. Maybe 2025 is the year of Triax. Who knows? Alright, moving on. Something else I've noticed that a lot of people are talking about the Rolly 35 AF online. They're mentioning that it's a good camera and it has a glass lens. And I'm also seeing that with the new Loma wide instant camera, glass lens. Oh my god, that's awesome. Now, I'm over here just kind of curious why, and I'm not trying to dwell on this or anything, but so many people jumped on me for mocking the Polaroid i2 with its plastic lens. So why are people celebrating a glass lens? Since when was a glass lens a big deal? And while we're on the topic of Polaroid, can I ask a question here? When the i2 came out, everyone was glazing it, and I was the crazy one for saying it was too expensive, and now a year later the update came out and all the videos are like, oh my god, Polaroid fixed it. I don't know, I was under the impression that the i2 was awesome and the price was justified and it was a great camera, and anyone complaining was just a hater or suffering from a skill issue. Why do they need to fix it? Most of those early reviews were radiating big shill energy, and it's honestly transparent and kind of embarrassing. This story is interesting, and keep in mind here, I'm not particularly religious or anything, but I find stuff like this fascinating. Let's talk about the Shroud of Turin. According to the Big Googie, the Shroud of Turin is a 14-foot linen cloth with an image of a crucified man that some believe is Jesus Christ. The image is consistent with traditional depictions of Jesus after his crucifixion. Alright, we got that out of the way. Now here's the part I learned about recently that's really fascinating. The image on the cloth is apparently a photographic negative. They discovered this because in 1898, Secondo Pia, I hope I'm saying that right, took a photo of it and the image on the cloth became a positive. That's really weird, right? A negative and a negative makes a positive. It begs the question, like, how? I'm just gonna say it. Are those resurrection tones? Bro, they weren't shooting Portra 2,000 years ago unless the drone aliens were there. Even if it is a fake though, my point still stands. There weren't dark rooms, there weren't Carhartt hats and gas stations in the 1400s. I know mad people throughout history have said that this cloth is just a hoax, it's a medieval forgery, whatever the case may be. But according to the BBC, Pia's photographs showed that the image on the cloth is a negative, dark where it should be bright. This deepens the mystery, and Pia himself casually suggested that the shroud could have been made by some primitive kind of photography. That idea has been inventively pursued by South African art historian Nicholas Allen, who argues that it could in principle have been achieved using materials and knowledge available to medieval scholars many centuries before genuine photography was invented. I don't know, man, it's kind of interesting. There's been more recent studies too done about the age of the cloth, and of course this is the internet, so everyone's gonna argue about everything always, but either way, a unique little story that touches on photography. That's always fun to think about. If you made it this far into the video, I hope those chores are going well. I hope you didn't drop a sock between the washer and dryer, because I'm really good at doing that. But I have a few quick channel updates for the Sweet Lou faithful here. First off, thank you so much for 25,000 subscribers. That is a big milestone for me. Super happy about that. This year, my goal is to kind of go back to some of the older energy on this channel. I used to make more off the walls, weird shit, and I'm not gonna lie, I miss that. I feel like I've sort of lost a bit of my identity on this channel during the grind over the years, and that makes me feel not good. But that's something for me to figure out. So as always, thanks for sticking around, thanks for watching and supporting the channel, thanks for watching the negatives. I'm still figuring out what this series is, so you're the cool kids who are gonna say, remember when this series was weird and had like 2 episodes per year? If you haven't subscribed at this point, I don't make the rules around here. You have to do it now, that's just how it works. And share this video with a friend. All right, bye.